Hey there, everybody. I've just got one question for you all tonight. Have you ever wanted to camp, but you can't? You're allergic to nature and you don't have a tent. Well, I've got good news. You can camp while in bed in a virtual space we'll plug into your head. It's Least Haunted Campfire Club. Yes, the Least Haunted Campfire Club. Give us the keys, we'll open our scary door. Sight, sound, and even taste if you make yourself a s'more. This is the new reality the Least Haunted has you. Let's tell ghost stories around some digital plasma.
There was dark, there was cold, there was sleet and snow. They were on the road with 2 more hours to go. But then Millicent Manfred Redmond Greer said, "I see a hotel sign. Can't we just stop here instead?" Her husband Harold said, "Just to be clear, we can still keep going, only 2 more hours from here." But Millicent Manfred Redmond Greer couldn't manage her fear of the darkness about and the roads unclear, and pronounced aloud, "We're pulling over, my dear." With the lobby in the front and parking in the rear, Harold hit the turn signal and he shifted gear and stopped at the front door, and the coast was clear, and into the lobby where there was no one here. A tap on the bell and Stu rose from the back room bed, and he rushed to the desk. Stu, his name tag simply read. We need a room," but Stu shook his sleepy head. His mind still groggy and his heart filled with dread, Stu replied, "All rooms are occupied, except for the room of the dead." But Millicent Manfred Redmond Greer said, "To be out in the dark and snow and cold instead? We'll take what you've got. We just need a bed." With a sigh and a shudder, Stu stumbled ahead. To the very back room the guests were led. And as he handed them the key and he shook his head, front desk Stu ironically said, "Enjoy your stay and may you sleep like the dead." And Millicent Manfred Redmond Greer took off her wet coat and she dropped her gear and rejoiced at the fact that she was really here. With a roof and a bed and a shitty painting of a deer, Harold said, "Okay, we're done for the day. Let's brush our teeth and let's hit the hay." And lights out in pajamas in the bed they lay. And the violent storm could be heard overhead as they glanced at the shadows as they lay in the bed. And no ghosts had howled, and the walls hadn't bled. And Millicent chuckled, "The room of the dead?" And deep sleep came for them both, for the time was right. And as Millicent slept, there was a touch oh so slight. And she jumped awake and filled with fright, for someone had touched her ear in the middle of the night. She shoved Harold awake. "Someone touched my ear." Half asleep Harold growled, "There's nobody here. You were imagining it. Go back to sleep, my dear." But Millicent Manfred Redmond Greer lay wide awake, peering about in fear. She lay awake for hours until sleep finally took her. She slept and dreamt deeply until once again something shook her. There was light and sound from behind the bathroom door. And this time Harold would not have mistook her. Once again she shoved Harold at her side. He didn't wake so easily, even though she tried. "Harold, there's someone in the bathroom." Though Harold merely sighed. "Fine, I'll go check it myself," Millicent madly replied. Quietly she crept to the door. The light beneath she spied, and she held her breath and closed her eyes, and threw the door open wide. In there stood Harold. It was Harold who was inside. Millicent could not comprehend this, no matter how hard she tried. And then she gasped and she froze, and then slowly turned her head, and she beheld a sight which filled her heart with dread. Harold was in the bathroom, and there was no one in the bed. Into the darkness and the snow, a sobbing and shuddering Millicent fled. A night of wind and storm and freezing cold is what she chose instead. "Woman missing and presumed dead," is what the newspapers read. Thus departs another guest of the hotel room of the dead.
How many times do we hear that same tune? coming from the speaker, the back of the room, and I never thought that I'd be here today. No, I never thought that I'd be here today. Life is just made out of pieces and shapes, and we are the angels who fell from the apes, and I never thought that I'd be here today. No, I never thought that I'd be here today. My whole life's repeating, here I go again, melancholy fleeting, how does it end? Depression's a terrible feeling we get when you think you owe life a debt, and I never thought I'd be here today. No, I never thought that I'd be here today. How many times did we hear that same tune coming from a speaker in the back of the room? But I never thought that I'd be here today.
My National Gallery. This is a story about my final visit to the National Gallery in Washington, D.C., and the donors living in the ceiling of its rotunda. The West Building has 3 levels that the public knows about. At the bottom, there is the lower level, named LL, on the elevator pad. Above LL is the street level, or ground floor, indicated with a 1 with a little star next to it. And then above that is the second floor, which is the main floor. To get in, you have to walk up the wide steps from the sidewalk of the National Mall, where the president is inaugurated. So you arrive on the second floor. The rotunda is on the second floor, and it's tall enough to imply a third floor, though no third floor is listed for the public. The West Building is the older building. It was designed by John Russell Pope in 1937, though he died before it was constructed, and President Garfield was assassinated on the same site 55 years before that. The rotunda is ringed by 2 sets of black columns, encircling a water fountain with a prancing bronze statue of Mercury. Mercury has 5-inch-long wings sprouting out of his ankles. They are not a part of his shoes. Above Mercury, the vault of the carved-out dome looms. Pope said that he modeled it after the Pantheon. When viewed from the inside, the dome is a hollow egg with the point of the egg balanced skyward. From the outside, the same dome has a much more gradual slope. It is a hubcap sitting on the building's flat roof. From both the inside and the outside, you can see that the dome is made of what is called pink Tennessee marble, though it is gray. Light comes in through a circular skylight at the rotunda's zenith. The sky was gray on the day I made my observations and became a lifetime donor to the museum. The skylight is the only place where inside and outside match. Sloping down from the skylight, a gradual cavity forms between the inside and outside of the dome. The volume of this hidden space increases as it slopes down the dome. There are pillars and architectural flourishes of forced perspective made to downplay the cavity. No one on the outside has ever noticed this discrepancy. I did. I'm not on the outside anymore. I did not reach this conclusion about the secret cavity while I was in the rotunda. I reached this conclusion 2 rooms down from the rotunda, staring at Plum Brandy by Edouard Manet. There were 2 other people in the room, 1 tourist and 1 guard. The guard was standing by the door, chatting with another guard in the next room at an ignorable volume. The tourist was a student. She was sitting at an easel that was placed upon a bedsheet. She was beginning to paint a reproduction of one of the National Gallery's many paintings of a windy field. A paper sign had been taped to the edge of her easel with her Instagram. I had seen Plum Brandy at the Getty in Los Angeles the fall before the pandemic, so that would have been 2 years ago.
I knew it well by now, since I had a plum brandy postcard from the Getty gift shop taped to my own desk back at home. The original oil painting, now hanging on the wall in front of me, was mesmerizing. The colors could not be reproduced by inkjet. Her dress was Tennessee pink. I leaned forward, examining the wide, smooth, curving brushstrokes of her dress and thinking about the rotunda's geometry, and feeling several cramps in several places. I had not sprung for a sleeper car. I had arrived in D.C. on a train to be romantic. I had slept in every position a chair would allow, on 2 trains, in 3 days. The plum brandy had arrived by plane. She had a different frame now that she was back home. She still held a cigarette in her hand, which rested and melted into the marble of the cafe table. She still stared with the impressionistic vagueness of a foggy face conveying a beautiful indifference at being a painting. There were skylights in the room, too, and they provided the dominant source of light. Her small glass of plum brandy looked darker than ever in the sunlit grayness of the space. The brandy was a much darker red than it had been in the sunny light of L.A. The red was slowly moving. It dripped from the drink like sap. I leaned in, staring as it slowly made its way from the glass to the marble tabletop within the painting. It was a deep, burnt red. A staticky voice bellowed in both of my ears. "Step back from the painting, sir. You are standing too close." I flinched backward automatically and turned toward the guard. The tourist glanced from me back to her own painting of the National Gallery's painting of a windy field. The guard gave no indication that she had heard the voice of doom. In any case, the voice had sounded male. I wondered for a moment why the voice had assumed that I was a sir. It had had the cadence and delivery of a recording. I left the room as quickly as I could for someone who doesn't want to act like they got in trouble with a pre-recorded voice. No one else took any note of this. It was all my little experience. I sat back down on a white marble bench below the hollow egg with my back against the rotunda's curving wall, trying to work out how close I was allowed to get to the paintings. I stared down at my sandals resting on the gray and black pink Tennessee marble floor. There must be lasers in front of the paintings. Before me, 2 reticulated black marble columns framed the fountain with the Mercury with little wings on his ankles. The fountain was loud, and the whole chamber echoed enough that I could dictate into my phone without having to type. No one could hear me, and no one could see that I was speaking into my phone because we were all wearing masks. And no one else was in the rotunda anyway. Now, looking up at the egg, I can see carved-out squares all decreasing in size as they reach the pinnacle. "This is one of the illusions," I said into my phone. Together, the tapering squares created a forced perspective, making the dome seem more spherical and less egg-shaped. A sphere wouldn't hide the cavity. An egg could. I was sure now, seeing the ceiling shape for a second time. It seemed important to take my audio note while I was here in the space itself. I recorded all of my observations, everything I've told you. Later, it was pointed out to me that there might not be a cavity at all. Maybe it was just solid marble. This was in the lower level, after I was arrested. There was no elevator to this bunker. The curator only suggested this solid marble alternative half-heartedly, more out of a sense of routine. She could check the box that she tried the plausible explanation on her report. There might not even be a report. This is not the sort of operation that welcomes a paper trail. She had taken my phone, and that's all she needed. I live in the cavity now. They regularly squeegee us for our natural oils and draw our blood. The oils are not for the paintings. They are for the wooden floors of the galleries. The blood is for the paintings. 3 dozen human donors are a small price to pay to keep masterpieces alive. The curator tells me that the formula was discovered hundreds of years ago. Without regular application, the paintings will crack. Only human blood will do, and I believe her. As a painter myself, I'm happy to help. I just wish they had somewhere else to keep us. It's so hot up here, and the sound of the fountain is deafening. Our sweat funnels down through a miniature aqueduct, though I haven't worked out what they do with our sweat. In recent months, I have found a way out. The other donors are not in any condition to walk around, but I sneak out now and then to raid the deli. You'd think that the National Gallery would have lasers and sensors all over, but there's nothing. Nothing at all to stop me from getting as close as I want. I still don't know where the mechanical voice came from the day I joined up. I have confirmed that none of the cameras are operational. The other bonus is I have free reign of the restoration rooms, so I have all the materials I need to paint for myself, and I have all of these master works to paint from. I've nailed Windy Fields. Once I've mastered each, I'll begin replacing them. Over the course of a lifetime, I am confident that the National Gallery will in fact be the National Garth von Ahnen Gallery. At least, I wasn't caught in the East Building. They don't use archival blood. Nothing there is meant to last. That was a story by me, Garth. That's it for now, everybody. I recorded this. I wrote the story in the rotunda, and then I finished the story at the Lincoln Memorial. And I just recorded the story on the top floor of an apartment building, and I can see several landmarks right near me. I can see the Washington Monument off there in the distance, and a few other buildings that I'm sure would be of note if I knew what they were. So that's it from DC. Hope you all have a good evening, and we'll catch you next year. Maybe, if we keep doing these campfire clubs. Maybe we will. I don't know. Do you guys want us to? It's the Least Haunted Campfire Club. The Least Haunted